This is the 100th Lord Roberts video since this channel was started 5 years ago in 2020. Maybe it is one of the most momentous stories that has so far been covered. This video is about every steam engine driver's worst nightmare, a bad road accident. Unfortunately, they were all too common at the beginning of the 20th century and often involved horrendous injuries and fatalities for the crew and sometimes passers-by. The causes of these accidents were naturally diverse. They resulted from poor roads and surfaces, absent or inadequate street lighting, and driver errors or misjudgments. William Fletcher, a traction engine designer and writer of several steam engine books, describes some of the problems which engine drivers faced. This quote is from one of his books, which was published in 1904. During wet weather, the narrow lanes are so soft that there is a strong probability of seeing the engine gently slide into a country ditch, or suddenly sink into a bog, the rest of a rainy day being often spent by the men in charge in endeavouring to extricate the engine by the aid of planks, screwjacks, hurdles and anything else available. Many of the steam engine drivers had questionable ability and or temperament. It was often not easy to find the right men, and of course, the First World War decimated the number and supply of drivers. Advertisements in the local newspaper were often placed to find suitable men. Fowler number 8903 was involved in several road accidents during its working life. Exactly how many is not known. Constantly hauling heavy loads of bricks and other building materials in 3 large 8-ton traction wagons on poor roads around Wiltshire often created the ideal circumstances for a disaster to occur. Unfortunately, no photographs of these accidents, when the engine was owned by Holloway Bros from West Lavington, have been found. At the turn of the 20th century, a camera was a rare thing to encounter. Only if a local photographer lived nearby was a photograph of such an event likely. And using photographs was also not common practice in the newspaper industry at that time. At Tom Paisley's well-known steam auction in 1980, where Fowler 8903 was sold, William Stern, an engineer and boiler inspector from St Ives, Cambridgeshire, was quoted in the catalogue as saying, "An aristocrat of road locos, fast, powerful, a slightly bent crankshaft stemming from an accident during working days just mars the exhilaration of driving this engine." It was because of this remark and the absence of any information that I started to search for the answers to where the accident occurred and what happened. I began by contacting the local museums in Market Lavington and Devizes, and the websites such as Traction Talk Forum, but I discovered nothing. Luckily, then I was contacted by Jamie Wright from Salisbury, who had researched extensively the brickyards of Wiltshire. He suggested I look for newspaper reports in the British Newspaper Archive, and particularly the local newspaper, the Devizes and Wiltshire Advertiser. Reading numerous articles in the Devizes and Wiltshire Advertiser and a couple of other newspapers which were contemporary at the beginning of the 20th century, it became clear how often steam road accidents occurred and how newsworthy they were. Of course, the roads then were comparatively empty, and so any incident would have been an exceptional event to report. Between 1901 and 1909, the Wiltshire Telegraph reported several such accidents involving traction engines on a notorious hill called Dunkirk Hill, near Devizes in Wiltshire. On the 18th of May 1901, it was reported that an engine with 3 wagons laden with bark and sod, which is more commonly known as turf, belonging to Mr. Stratton of Alton, ran away down the hill. Alton is located about 6 miles east of Devizes. On the 7th of August and 4th of September 1909, it was reported a traction engine smashed on Dunkirk Hill, and one ran amuck belonging to Mr. Barnes, haulage contractor, respectively. It was stated that no one was injured. But then I read some interesting newspaper articles that exactly referenced the Holloway Brothers from the Market Lavington Brick, Tile and Pottery Works. These were dated within the period Fowler 8903 was owned by them. Jamie Wright had sent me a copy of page 5 from the Wiltshire Advertiser dated the 10th of July 1902. This mentions an accident on Dunkirk Hill, which is also referred to as Rowde Hill in the article. It reported the accident happening on Monday the 7th of July 1902. The article reads as follows: Accident in Rowde Hill. This dangerous hill was the scene of a second catastrophe of a very similar nature within a comparatively short period on Monday morning last. A traction engine belonging to Messrs. Holloway Bros, Market Lavington, and drawing 2 loads of bricks, the total weight of which, together with the trucks, was about 16 tons, was proceeding from Lavington to Spy Park by way of Dunkirk, and when negotiating the curb in the road near Mr. Stancombe's lodge, the excessive weight behind the engine rendered the steering gear unmanageable and the engine beyond control. For a short distance, the heavy mass thundered down the hill, and then, strange to say, the engine turned completely round as if to come back up the road. The trucks were overturned and smashed beyond repair, and the bricks hurled in all directions. Fortunately, few people were about, and no one was injured. The men in charge of the engine had a narrow escape and are to be commended for the plucky manner in which they stuck to the runaway. Luckily, the engine was not damaged and was able to return to Lavington and bring back wagons with which to remove the debris. We would suggest it would be far better and much safer if drivers of heavily laden traction engines were to take the Cane Hill route in preference to the steep and dangerous Dunkirk Hill. The accident was also referred to in a short editorial which appeared in column 2 on page 5 of the same newspaper. The article reads, "An illustration of the tenacity of instinct, or of the telepathic influence of the animate upon the inanimate, as our readers may please to choose, was given the other day on Dunkirk Hill near Devizes. A traction engine had bolted and was running at a dangerous pace down the steep incline. An old man, seeing it coming, bravely ran into the middle of the road and waved his hands wildly to stop it. Strange to relate, the engine followed the example of a horse, swerved violently, turned right round and stopped. The pressure of the rear weight caused the reversal, but the old man is doubtless happy in the belief that his gesticulations had been seen by the wheels and boiler and heeded in the proper manner. Who shall disturb his contentment with theories of a mere scientific nature. In 1909, the Devizes and Wiltshire Advertiser reported another incident involving the Holloway Brothers engine, which happened on Friday the 16th of July 1909. It reads, "Serious accident to a lad." An accident attended by serious consequences occurred in the Potterne Hill on Friday morning last, by which a lad named Victor Neat sustained considerable injuries. The lad, who is 16 years of age, is an orphan, being a son of the late Mr. J. T. Neat of Eastcourt Street. He has been living with his uncle in Eastcourt Street and was in the employ of Messrs. M. K. Sloper and Co., his duty being to accompany Mr. S. Pierce, outside for Messrs. Sloper, on his journeys. Mr. Pierce started with the lad at 8 o'clock. The horse did not belong to Messrs. Sloper. It appeared to be steady, however. When in Potterne Hill, near Miss Ewart's lodge, a traction engine and trucks belonging to Messrs. Holloway Brothers was met. The horse passed the engine and one of the trucks all right, but it then became restive, with the result that the two occupants of the trap were thrown into the road. Both were thrown under one of the trucks, but Mr. Pierce escaped unhurt. The lad was not so fortunate, for he sustained fracture of some of his ribs and other internal injuries. Assistance was at once rendered, but the lad was so seriously hurt that it was impossible to convey him in the trap to the cottage hospital. A young man named Bodman, who was passing on a cycle, rode on to Mr. Arter's, the New Inn, for assistance, and Mr. Arter at once proceeded to the spot with a trolley, by means of which the injured lad was taken to the cottage hospital, where he was immediately attended to by the doctors. Latest inquiries show that the lad is slowly improving, and there is now a chance of his complete recovery. Potterne Hill refers to Potterne, a village in Wiltshire, which lies about 2 miles south of Devizes. The distance between Potterne and Market Lavington is approximately 4 miles. Turning to the Dunkirk Hill accident in 1902, here is a postcard view at the top of the hill, which drops down on the right-hand side of the building in the middle of the picture. The building is known as Shane's Castle, the former road toll house from the 18th century. It is thought to have been built for the Devizes Consolidated Turnpike Trust in 1840 to 1850. The building exists today as a domestic property. Dunkirk Hill is on the A342, which runs in a northwesterly direction from Devizes to Rowde. The descent along Dunkirk Hill runs for about half a mile, and at its steepest it reaches a maximum gradient of 13.4%. The average gradient along this stretch is about 7.1%. Around 1921, according to the census in that year, Devizes had a population of about 6,000, compared to Market Lavington's of about 900. It is only about 6 miles from Market Lavington. The following two photographs show Dunkirk Hill as it was at the turn of the 20th century and at the time of the Holloway Brothers road accidents. Dunkirk Hill apparently acquired its name relatively recently and has not always had that name. According to the Survey of English Place Names, the area received the name Dunkirk around 1820, after the French port of Dunkirk. There is no evidence of a pre-19th century name, at least none that survived, in common usage or survives in historical records. From this photograph, taken 1 year after the 1902 accident, the road is unsurfaced and has a steep decline, surrounded by mature trees. On one side, a narrow pavement leads down the hill. It certainly conjures up the thought, driver beware. Imagine what it would have been like travelling down this slope in wet weather. The two sites, Dunkirk Hill and Potterne Hill, where the Holloway brothers' accidents occurred, are actually known as Holloways. A Holloway is an ancient sunken path or lane that has been worn into the soft land over centuries by the continuous passage of people, livestock and cartwheels. The name comes from the Old English term Holloweg, meaning sunken road. Typically, holloways have a sunken nature and are deep, shady lanes with high vaulted tree canopies. They often trace ancient roots and can date back to the Iron Age. These paths are often found in the soft chalk and sandstone soils of Wiltshire, where erosion by water and traffic has carved deep, narrow roots. Holloway brothers only owned one road locomotive at the Market Lavington Brick, Tile and Pottery Works, and were not known to have hired other steam engines to do contract work. So, it is more than likely that Fowler 8903 was the engine mentioned in the newspaper articles. As the 1902 accident on Dunkirk Hill sounded more serious, maybe it was this one which caused the damage reported by William Stern. But there is no explicit reference to the damage Stern commented on, and surprisingly, given the gravity of the accident, there was seemingly no damage to the rear offside wheel. The engine could still travel back home. Fowler 8903 was in regular use around Wiltshire. It did long hours of hard and tiring work. One or two of the drivers were known to have cut corners when driving the engine. An accident, as mentioned in the newspapers, was, under the circumstances, more than likely to happen. So in conclusion, it seems certain that Fowler 8903 was involved in a number of road accidents during its working life. And for an engine of its size, on heavy hauling duties, this was not uncommon at the time. We may, however, never know exactly how many the engine was involved in, nor which one caused the damage to the crankshaft and/or the offside rear wheel. Luckily, Fowler 8903 survived and did not suffer the fate of many other steam engines of being written off and scrapped. Though the engine had a close shave in the late 1950s, when it was taken to a scrapyard in Wigginton, Hertfordshire. But that is another story.